Welcome to this demo or review video of the AOMEI Partition Assistant software, where I'm going to show you how to use the AOMEI Partition Assistant, and we're going to be exploring its basic functions as well as the extra features, so you can decide if this software is something that can be useful to you. Let's get started. So for starters, if you want to download the AOMEI Partition Assistant, you can just come to this webpage, which is diskpart.com. And then you'll find this free download button, so you can download the free version, and you can just click on that to start the download. On this next page, you can just click on download freeware, and that's going to start the download. When it's finished, just click on the file to open the file, click OK. And then here you'll be prompted if you want to try the Pro Edition for free. And I actually recommend that you do try the Pro demo for free. So I'm going to click on that and then click on Install Now. Now this video isn't sponsored at all, but I am an AOMEI affiliate. So if you want to purchase the Pro Edition of this AOMEI Partition Assistant software, you can find a link in the description of this video and the pinned comment. That'll take you to a web page that looks like this, where you can purchase the AOMEI Partition Assistant Pro. And like I said, this is an affiliate link, meaning I'll earn a small commission if you make the purchase via that link, but there won't be any extra cost to you. And if I do have any coupon codes or discount codes, I'll also include those in the description as well. But once you make a purchase, you'll see that your license code will be delivered to your email immediately. And you also have a 90-day unconditional money-back guarantee. So if you're not happy with this software, you can always just refund it. But if you scroll down on this page, you'll just need to enter your billing information, and you can either choose to pay by credit card, PayPal, check, or a purchase order request. And once you've selected any of those, you can just click on Buy Now. And that's a great way to support this channel and the content that I create on here. And then once you have your license key, you can open up the AOMEI Partition Assistant and then just click on Enjoy Now. And then to activate your copy of the AOMEI Partition Assistant, you can click on this icon up here, or you can also click on this hamburger menu and then just click on Register. And it'll prompt you for your license code, and you can just paste that license code into this box and then click on Register. And then your registration will be successful. So now that you have an activated copy of the AOMEI Partition Assistant Pro software, let's have a look at the UI. Now first, you'll have this navigation bar up here, where you can apply actions, which we'll get to in a moment. And you also have some different subcategories like cloning disks, converting disks, some tools that will help you free up space, a recovery section where you can recover some lost files, a wipe section where you can completely wipe your hard drive or SSD, a test section to test your disks, and then also some additional tools that come with the AOMEI Partition Assistant software. Up here in this corner, you can also find some other functions like leaving a review, refreshing the page so it can reload the disks, this hamburger menu where you can also find a manual and some online tutorials, and you can also check for updates. In the main screen here, you have two views of the disks that you have in your system. And between these two views, you have this line which you can click on if you want to hide or show any of these two views or just make it bigger or smaller. For this tutorial, I'm just going to leave it like this. So as you can see here, up here you have disk 0, and also here you have disk 0 as well as disk 1. And as I choose it at the top here, it also gets selected at the bottom here. Now, if you have no idea how hard disks or SSDs work, basically, you can think of this disk as like a pizza, and then the partitions on it are slices inside of that pizza. So as you can see here, I've got 5 physical disks inside of this computer. One of them is a USB flash drive. That one is an external USB drive. And you can tell that by looking at the logo, which is the USB logo on top of those icons there. Whereas the other drives are physical drives, and this is the drive that has a Windows on it. Now for each of these disks, you can also see the type of disk, meaning if it's GPT or MBR. You can also see the size of the physical disk and then the size of the partitions that are on that disk, the used space, if it's able to show that, and then any important flags, status, alignment, and so on. Now, if you select any of these disks or partitions, here on the right, you can also see properties and health. And if you click on that, it's going to show you more info like the disk model and a whole bunch of other things, as well as it does a smart health check, which is basically like a quick test just to check if the disk is in good working order. And as you can see, the smart health on this SSD is good. Now, if you go back, you also have some other functions like cloning a disk, creating a quick partition, converting it to MBR, rebuilding the MBR in case you have any boot issues, deleting all partitions, wiping the hard drive, and then you also have this option to open the dynamic disk manager, which will actually close the AOMEI Partition Assistant and then open the dynamic disk manager, and you can also defrag this disk. Now, most of these settings can also be found if you select the disk and then right-click on it. You'll also find most of those options that you see here on the right of the software. Now, let's start looking at some of the basic functions. For that, I'm going to select this external USB hard drive that I have plugged into my computer. Now, here we can see that this is a terabyte drive, and it has 3 partitions on it, one being 1 gig, the other being 929 gig, and the other one also being 1 gig in size. And this is a GPT drive with an NTFS file system. So let's start by deleting this first partition up here. If I right click on this and I click on delete partition, you'll have these different options where you can either choose to delete the partition quickly, which will delete the partition without wiping the data, or you can delete the partition and wipe the data. So basically what this means is, do you want the data to be recoverable on this drive or not? If you don't want the data to be recoverable, you'll need to select the second option, and you can select any one of these options. But you can see that some of these options will take a very long time to complete. For this tutorial, I'm just going to select this first option that says fill sectors with 0, safe and quick, and then click on OK. Now, once I did that, if you have a look at this apply button up here, you'll see it's now changed, so we can apply those actions. So to apply those actions, we can click on apply, and it'll give us a summary of the pending operations. So what it's going to do now is it's going to wipe the data on hard disk number 3 that we selected, and it's also going to delete the partition on hard disk number 3 that we selected. And down here, it also gives you an estimated time of how long this might take. So if you're happy with that, you can click on proceed, and then you'll be prompted if you're sure you want to start with this. You can just click on yes, and then it's going to start executing those operations. If it's going to take a long time and you want to shut down your computer after all of these operations have been completed, you can also click on this box here to shut down the computer after completing all operations. But for this tutorial, we're just going to wait for this to finish. And once it's finished, you'll see this message that says, congratulations, all operations have been completed successfully. You can just go ahead and click on OK. So now, if we go ahead and we have a look at disk number 3, we can see that we still have 3 partitions, but this first one is unallocated. Now that's great if we only wanted to delete and wipe one single partition on the drive, but what if we actually want to format and delete all the partitions on this drive? Then we can select the disk, right click on it, and then we can click on delete all partitions. Again, we'll see the same window. For this example, I'm just going to leave the delete all partitions selected and then click on OK. Once again, before that's executed, we have to click on apply. So I'll go ahead and click on apply. It'll give us another summary of the pending operations. I'll just go ahead and click on proceed and then click on yes. And we'll just wait for this to finish. And then once again, click on OK on this window. Now, if we go back to disk number 3, we can see that it's a clean disk with no partitions on it because all of this space is unallocated. Now, to create a new partition, you can either select this disk here and then click on quick partition, which will take you to this screen where it's basically going to pre-allocate some partitions for you for your software, documents, fun, and all that other stuff. And by default, it'll create 5 partitions for this drive that I have selected, but you can also click on this button here and then only make this one partition. You can also change the disk type from MBR to GPT or vice versa, and disable or enable any of these other options. Now, generally, I recommend just leaving all of these options on default if you don't know what all of them do. And then once you're ready, you can just click on start partitioning. But for now, I'm just going to cancel out of this and show you how to create the partition manually. Now, instead of selecting the disk, you can select this unallocated space on the disk. And then over here, you can click on create partition. Now, if you only want to have one partition, you can just leave it on the default partition size. You can change the drive letter if you like, and then you can also change the file system. I'll just leave this on NTFS, but here you can see all of the other file systems that you can also choose. I'm just going to select NTFS, and if you click on advanced, you can also find some other settings here, like you can give this partition a name. I'll just call this external 1. This will automatically be created as a primary partition because it's the first partition. And for all of these other settings, I recommend just leaving this on the default and then clicking on OK. Now to create that partition, you'll have to click on apply. So I'm going to go ahead and click on apply and then click on proceed and click on yes to start the operation. Now that it's finished, I'm just going to click on OK, and it's just going to reload the disks once again. And then we'll see if we scroll down on this page here and we have a look at disk number 3, we can now see that we have one partition on it called external 1. Now with this partition selected here, we also have some access to some other functions here on the right. One of these options that I quickly want to showcase is to split the partition. So if I go ahead and click on that, I can now split this partition into 2 partitions. And I can also adjust the size of these partitions by clicking and dragging on this slider here. So here on the left, I've got my external 1 partition, and still on the same drive, I can now create a new partition, which will be G in this case. And let's say, for instance, I wanted to make this partition 150 gigs, right about there. And I'm just going to leave the slider there. And if you don't want to use the slider, you can also just use this options down here. And once again, if you click on advanced, you'll have this option to allow partition alignment to optimize the performance of an SSD. So only use this if the drive that you have selected right now is an SSD. For me, it's not an SSD, it's a hard drive, so I'm not going to select that option, but I'm going to click on OK. And then once again, I'll have to click on apply so I can apply those changes. Now, one thing that I just want to mention is you don't have to click apply every single time that you've made a change. And what I mean by that is, right now there's one action that needs to be completed. But if I wanted to make another change or another action before clicking on apply, you can go ahead and do that. And for this example, I'm just going to go to advanced, and then I'm just going to change the drive letter from F to, let's say, K, just for this example, and then click on OK. And now you'll see the pending actions have changed to 2 instead of 1. And if I click on apply, once again, you'll see these pending operations, and it'll show how many operations that you've selected and what exactly is going to happen if you go ahead and click on proceed. By now, I assume that you get the idea of what happens if you click on proceed. It's just going to execute the tasks that I've selected here. So I'm not going to click on proceed now. I'm just going to close out of this. Another quick thing that I just want to mention is that you don't have to apply those changes. If you want to undo something, you can also just click on this arrow here and it's going to undo the action that you selected. And if you want to redo it, you can also just click on that arrow there to redo it and then apply it to that drive. But by now, I think you get the idea of all the basic functions that you can use inside of the AOMEI Partition Assistant software. So let's have a look at some of the more advanced functions. The first one being cloning a disk. Now, if we go ahead and click on clone up here, we have a few different options, and we can either migrate an OS, which will only clone the system and boot partition to an SSD or another hard drive, or you can clone the entire disk to another disk, including the system boot files, or you can choose to only clone a partition to another disk. Now, in most cases these days, people are replacing their old hard drives with SSDs, so they'll be using the clone disk function. And if I go ahead and click on this, you'll see that I have 2 options. I can either clone the disk quickly or do a sector by sector clone. Usually, I also recommend that you just use this first option, and you can go ahead and click on next. And then you'll need to select the source disk. So this means you need to select the disk that Windows is currently installed on. And for me, it's disk 2, which is the Western Digital SSD that I have installed. So once you've identified your source disk, you can select it and then click on next. Then you need to choose a destination disk. So if you're replacing your hard drive with an SSD, this is where you'll need to select your SSD. So this is the blank disk that you have, or this is the target disk that you have where you need to clone the drives to. So in this example, I'll just go ahead and select disk 3, which is the external hard drive that I have plugged into this machine. Now, it's very important to note that all of the contents on this target disk will be deleted in the process of cloning this data. And you can also optimize the performance of the SSD if the destination disk is an SSD. So only if you're cloning to an SSD, you need to select this option here. And then you can go ahead and click on next. Once again, like I explained before, all of the data on this destination disk that you're cloning to will be completely wiped out. If you're sure that you want to do this, you can go ahead and click on yes. Now next, you're going to have some different cloning options. You can clone the disk without resizing the partitions. You can fit the partitions to the entire disk, or you can edit the partitions on this disk yourself. Now to edit these partitions, you can select a partition and then you can click on the slider here to drag this partition smaller or larger. Now for these system partitions, I don't recommend that you change the size of it at all. You can just leave it as is. You only need to change the size of your data partition or your local disk partition. Now, if I choose this clone without resizing partitions option, because I'm cloning from a 500 gig to a terabyte drive, you'll see that I have a bunch of unallocated space here. And ideally, you'd want to have all of those unallocated space allocated to this local disk drive. And if you select this fit partitions to entire disk option here, it's automatically going to allocate all of that free space to this local disk. So to go ahead with this clone, you can just click on next. And before starting, you'll see a note that after the clone or migration, all the destination disks will be bootable, meaning you'll be able to boot from it. But there are a few cases where some computers just aren't able to boot from the destination disk. And then they give you some tips on how to troubleshoot that issue. Now, that's a topic for a whole nother video that I'll create on this channel. I'm not going to be explaining that in this video, but once you're ready to start the clone, you can just go ahead and click on finish. And then to actually start the clone, you'll have to click on apply so you can apply those actions. Now, cloning this disk is going to take a whole lot of time, so I'm not going to apply the action in this video. I've already showed you what it looks like when you apply these actions. And I'll create another tutorial on this channel showing you exactly how you can migrate your operating system to an SSD and clone your existing drive to an SSD. But to move along with this video, if we go ahead and click on the convert section up here, you can convert your disks between MBR and GPT, and you can also convert your disks between dynamic and basic disks, and you can also convert your file systems between NTFS and FAT32. So these two options up here is for converting an entire disk, and this one down here is to convert a partition. Now for this tutorial, I'm just going to convert between MBR or GPT, and I'll click on that to select it. And because disk 3 is the current selected disk, it'll be selected by default, but you can also click on this drop down here to select any of these other disks. And then I'll click on OK to start this. And once again, you'll have to click on apply to apply that action. In this free up space section here, we have a PC cleaner where we can remove some junk files to free up disk space. We have an app mover where we can move applications or folders to another drive. We can delete large files, and we have a duplicate files finder. Now let's start by having a look at the PC cleaner. So I'll select that. And then it tells me that I have approximately 2 gigs of disk space that I can free up. I'll just go ahead and click on start scan, and it's going to scan my computer for any junk files. Next, you'll see a summary of everything that it found and that it wants to delete. I'll just leave all of the defaults selected and then click on clean all. And then once it's done, it'll say cleanup completed. So that's the PC cleaner. I'll exit out of that. And if we have a look at the app mover, we can also move apps or folders to another drive. Now, what this does is it allows you to move apps or folders to another drive while keeping the original access path to increase your partition size. So the moved apps can still work properly, moved folders can still be accessible via the original path, and moved apps and folders can be restored to its original location if you want to revert this process. So for this example, I'm going to move an app, not a folder. So I'll select move apps. Then I'll need to select the partition or disk where the app is installed. So I'm just going to go ahead and select my local disk C, then click on next. It's going to find all of the programs that I have installed on my computer. And for this tutorial, let's just use 7-zip as an example. I'll go ahead and select that. And then down here, I need to select where I want to move the selected applications from the C drive to. And if I click on this drop down, I can go ahead and select any of these disks, which will then put that program on the root of the selected drive. But you can also select a path manually. So I'm going to do that. And then I'll just select the data drive and click on OK. And then click on move. You'll be prompted that if the app that you're trying to move is currently running, that it's going to be forcibly closed during this process. And if you want to continue, just go ahead and click on OK. And it's then going to move that app to the folder or file directory that you specified. And for this, you don't actually have to click on apply to apply these actions. It's already done. Now, if you want to revert that, I'm just going to go ahead and go back to the app mover and click on Manage Restore. Here I have the app that I've moved, and if I go ahead and select that, I can just click on Restore, click on OK, and it's going to put that app or folder back to its original location. So that's how you can use the app mover inside of the AOMEI Partition Assistant software. Next, let's delete some large files. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. I'll go ahead and select the disk as local disk C and then click on Start Scan. It's going to scan all of the files and folders that I have on that drive, and then it should sort them by the largest files or folders first. And as you can see here, I've got a file that's 65 gigs in size on this drive. And if I wanted to delete that, I can select it and then click on delete, and it will then permanently delete that file from the system. And like it says here, please be careful when you delete these large files, because these deleted files cannot be recovered. But that's how you can use this Delete Large Files app. You can go ahead and select a bunch of these files if you want to free up some space, and then click on delete, and that's going to free up some space on your drive. I'll just exit out of this. And then lastly, you also have this duplicate files finder. I recommend just leaving all of this on default and then click on scan. And then it's going to scan your computer for these duplicate files. And once it's finished, you'll be able to delete those duplicate files as well. I'm just going to click on cancel to cancel this scan. And that's it for the free up section. If we have a look at the recovery section, we can easily recover deleted or lost partitions from a disk, or we can recover any lost, deleted, or formatted data from a disk. So I'm going to go ahead and select this recover data option, which will then open this new recover Windows data wizard that we have here. For this example, I'm just going to use my USB flash drive that I have plugged in, and then click on Start Scan. And it's going to do a deep scan and search for lost files on that drive. And as it's busy scanning, it'll show the files found, the size of the files that's been found. And you can also see here on the right where those files have been found. So in this case, it's been found here in other missing files. And I've got 16 documents and 5 other files, which looks like DLL files. But let's go to the documents and then go to Excel. So here it's actually found a CSV file. And if you want to recover any of these files, you can just select it by selecting this checkbox. Then this recover button here will light up and you can click on recover one file. It's going to ask you where you want to save this recovered file. I'm just going to select the desktop for this example, then click on select folder and then click on OK. And then here I have this folder on my desktop, which is the recovered file. If I open that, I have a folder inside of it called Other Missing Files, Documents, Excel, and then I have that CSV file. And if I open this file, I can see that I can completely view all of its contents. I'm not actually sure what this was, but just to show you that the file is actually accessible and it's not corrupted at all. Now, recovering a file while it's still busy scanning will also pause the scan. So if you want to go ahead and scan for more files, you'll have to click on this button to resume the scan. But that's basically how you can use this Windows recovery tool inside of the AOMEI Partition Assistant. And I'm just going to stop the scan for now and click on stop and then exit out of it. That'll then take me back to the AOMEI Partition Assistant Pro software. So if you wanted to recover an entire partition, you just use the partition recovery instead of the data recovery. But next, let's have a look at the wipe section. And you have a few different options here where you can wipe an entire hard drive. You can choose to only wipe a partition. You can shred files, which will completely and securely delete the files from your computer. And then you also have this SSD secure erase option, which securely erases an SSD to reset it to factory state for peak performance. Now, like I said, I showed you how to wipe hard drives and partitions earlier in this guide. It's basically the same like we did earlier, where we can select the different methods for wiping the hard drive. And by using this wizard here, you just have to go ahead and select the drive or the partition from this drop-down menu. But it's basically the exact same as selecting the disk on this UI here, and then selecting delete all partitions or wipe hard drive, where you can then select the wiping method and then go ahead and apply that action. So next, let's go over to the test section. Here we can test the read and write speeds of the disk, and we can also do a surface test, which will scan the hard drive for bad sectors. Let's go ahead and run a disk speed test. and I'm going to run this on my SSD, so I'll select the C drive. If you want a more comprehensive test, you can click on Pro mode, and you then also have some other test modes that you can go ahead and play around with here. For this tutorial, I'm just going to use the simple mode, then click on Start, and it's then going to start testing the disk speed of my SSD. And first, it'll test the read speed and then the write speed. And then once it's done, it'll display these results. And you can also click on Export to copy these results to the clipboard, export it to a text file or a screenshot. I'm just going to exit out of this tool, and then we can also do a disk surface test. And it's going to do the disk surface test on whichever disk you have selected here in the main UI. So I'll just select the quick test for this example, then click on Start, and then it's just going to do a disk surface test on that disk and look for any bad sectors on it. Green blocks means it's normal, and red blocks means it's damaged. And you can just go ahead and let this finish to have a look at your disks to see if there are any bad sectors on it. I'm just going to go ahead and cancel this for the sake of this video, and then click on cancel again to close this dialog. Now lastly, if I go ahead and I click on tools here, there's a bunch of other different tools that we have here in this AOMEI Partition Assistant Pro software. The first one being you can create bootable media in a Windows PE bootable environment. So what this means is if you select this option and you click on next, you can create a Windows PE environment which has the AOMEI Partition Assistant software included on that Windows PE environment. And you can either burn this to a CD or DVD, you can create a USB flash drive, or you can export it as an ISO file, and then you can then use another software like Rufus, for example, to write that ISO file to a USB flash drive, or you can use a program like Ventoy to create a bootable USB flash drive and then just copy this ISO file onto that Ventoy flash drive. Now, I'm not going to be showcasing this anymore in this video. I'll be creating separate videos on this channel around this Windows PE bootable environment with the Partition Assistant Pro software on it. And if you'd like to see that, you can just go ahead and check the playlist that I'll leave in this video's description. But for now, I'm just going to exit out of this. And then on that same topic, if we go back to Tools, here it says Create Portable Version. We can also click on this, and this is going to create a portable version of the AOMEI Partition Assistant on a removable drive, such as a USB flash drive. This means you can boot from the USB flash drive, and you'll have only the AOMEI Partition Assistant Pro software on that flash drive. So the one that I explained earlier is you'll have a Windows environment which has the AOMEI Partition Assistant on it, and this only has the AOMEI Partition Assistant on that USB flash drive. And to use this function, you can basically just click on Next. You can select the USB flash drive that you want to use and then click on Create. It's going to format that USB flash drive and then create a bootable AOMEI Partition Assistant Pro flash drive. Now, if we go back to the Tools menu, you can also create a Windows to Go. Now, if you don't know what Windows to Go is, it's basically Windows on the go that you can run from a USB flash drive. And by using this Win to Go function inside of the AOMEI Partition Assistant, you can create Windows to Go for a personal computer, or you can create Windows to Go for Mac computer. Now, once again, I'm not going to be showcasing this inside of this tutorial, but basically you'll need to select a Windows ISO file. If you don't have a Windows ISO file, then you'll need to download it, or you can create a Windows to Go with your current system specs. And Windows to Go is only available in Windows 10 Enterprise and Education. But to have a look at the other functions, I'm just going to exit out of that, then go back to Tools. The next tool here is to extend a partition wizard, and that's basically also something that I've showed earlier in this guide. But this is just a wizard, and you can extend your system partition with this tool, or you can select any other partition from any other disk that you have connected to your computer. But if you wanted to extend your system partition, meaning your C drive, you can have this first one selected and then just click on Next. And then you can basically just go through these prompts to extend a partition, and you can go ahead and click on Next. But this wizard does not support extending partitions on a GPT disk. And to extend a GPT partition, you'll need to use the main Partition Assistant console. So this wizard is basically only applicable to MBR drives. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on OK and exit out of this to go back to the AOMEI Partition Assistant. And if we have a look at the next tool, we can also use this to reset Windows passwords. Now I think this is really cool, but you'll also need to create a Windows PE environment. And you can follow this wizard to go ahead and create this Windows PE environment. And I think the first option and this reset Windows password option basically creates the exact same environment. And I'll have a look at that in other videos on my channel. We've already covered this tool here. Next, you can also integrate this to a recovery environment. Now what this option means is you can directly use the Partition Assistant in the recovery environment. And if you go ahead and click on that and you click on Next, you can select the AOMEI Partition Assistant as a recovery environment on Windows. Then click on Proceed and it's going to integrate it into the recovery environment in Windows. Now, for me, this operation cannot continue because for some reason it can't find the recovery environment on my system. That might just be something wrong on my system, but I'll show you a screenshot on screen now of what this recovery environment means. Basically, instead of loading into Windows, you'll be able to load into the AOMEI Partition Assistant environment to help you troubleshoot Windows in case it's crashed. I'm just going to go ahead and click on OK and exit out of this. Then if we go back to Tools, we have the UEFI BIOS Boot Options Manager. If I go ahead and select that, you can basically change the boot order in your BIOS by using this tool. And you can select a disk or a boot option and then just use these arrows here or these options here in the middle to basically change your boot order. And you can click on Restart Now so you can apply those changes. And then lastly, you can also run this Windows 11 update checker to check if your PC can run Windows 11. I'll go ahead and click on Start Check. And it's just going to check the system requirements and my PC can run Windows 11. Now, even if your PC can't run Windows 11, I've got plenty of guides on this channel showing you how you can upgrade to Windows 11 on unsupported hardware, if that's something that you want to do in the future. But this has been my demo or review of the AOMEI Partition Assistant software. And like I said before, if you want to support this channel, you can go ahead and purchase a license by using the affiliate links that I have in the description of this video and in the pinned comment. It'll greatly support this channel and the content that I create on here. But if you don't want to do that, I just hope that you got some value out of this video. Please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. And I'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.